We are live there. Okay.
All right, cue me up when you're ready. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Critique Revolve, which I believe is going to be the first movie review that we do for 2023. It is February. It is the drought season, stereotypically, for a lot of movies, in which not a lot comes out, or what does hasn't got a lot of notoriety, or avoided the big Oscar baity releases or the big Christmas Day hits. It's when the theaters take a little snooze and try and recuperate before the big, ever-increasing summer explosion, which now seems to start in April.
Late March. April, yeah.
I don't know, but we're going to be talking about the newest M. Night Shyamalan movie, Knock at the Cabin. I am your host, Thomas Cowley. Joined with me today is Michael Flores.
Hello.
And we're going to go into not only this movie, but also a little bit of M. Night as a director, as a writer, as a filmmaker, and where he's come from, where he's going, and what people should expect with this. Because he has quite an interesting history. I think he started very much so as a golden boy. People loved his work. In the late 90s and early 2000s, he had hit after hit after hit for several years, some of which brought in 10 times the budget, which is what every studio executive dreams about and pleasures themselves to, is hearing those kind of numbers, because frankly, who wouldn't?
He also started a generation of copycats with his style, the whole twist sensation.
He's perhaps single-handedly well-known and respected for what he did in the beginning and the source of so much bad writing that came after as one individual person, which I think, in a way, that dichotomy, that two sides of the same coin, very much is a fitting metaphor for him as a filmmaker and his body of work so far. Many of them have fallen into critical acclaim, fan acclaim, well-written, shocking twists, pop culture references.
Is there any middle-of-the-road films? It seems like they're either well-received or just shat on.
Maybe his most recent one, Old, but even then, that was probably more of one than the other.
Yeah.
Or they seem to be just detested. Things that made people groan in theaters. I remember to this day watching the trailer for Devil, his 2010 film, and people were kind of interested. And in it, then when it came up from the mind of M. Night Shyamalan, there was an audible, oh.
Well, that also that came out on the heels of The Happening, as well as The Last Airbender. And if you want to throw in Lady in the Water as well, which I love that film, but most audiences despise that movie. So at that time, he had Lady in the Water, The Happening, The Last Airbender.
He had three strikes, you're out, and then people were not looking at at Devil with a lot of
most people
excitement.
Don't come back from, because look at this little stint here. It started in 2006. I would say it happened with The Village, but I don't think people realized it yet.
Let's go back a little bit farther. M. Night Shyamalan has rose to acclaim with the pop culture hit The Sixth Sense. He did a couple of movies beforehand, but one of which was a student film and one was a uncredited rewrite. The Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis was the standout movie for him, written and directed, pop culture twist ending that nobody saw coming at the time, rocketed him to the moon. $40 million budget, made over $600 million box office. After that, he had just a writing stint with Stuart Little, which is a kid's movie, but it also made him money. But then it became, which is perhaps one of the ones that film fans, film critics, and lovers of movies praise a lot, is Unbreakable, which was with, again, Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson, and was perhaps one of his easily fucking most interesting.
And also started a trend. Before Unbreakable, the whole idea of the regular superhero not wearing the uniform, but just a regular person that has powers, that wasn't a thing.
It was not a thing.
People don't realize that's only about within the last 2 decades that started to become popular, because
Not even.
What ripped off Unbreakable was Heroes.
Yeah.
That came out shortly after, and it capitalized on that whole idea, the novelty factor of these are regular people that have superhuman abilities.
Mm-hmm. And that he was another $75 million budget, $250 million box office. Definitely smaller, but still respectable.
It wasn't as a critical success as The Sixth Sense. And it took, I would say, a good 3 or 4 years for that movie to...
Which is shocking to me because I don't get how critics didn't get it.
When it first came out, it was hated. And I think a lot of people were just comparing it to The Sixth Sense. And it's a very different film. It's a totally different type of movie. And because of that, I feel like possibly audiences and critics weren't ready for that. But then after the smoke settled, I don't know a single person that doesn't love that movie.
Yeah. After that, he had Signs in 2002, which that was perhaps his biggest hype, I would say.
Mainstream, too.
Mainstream excitement. Huge. Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix. It had a $72 million budget, made $400 million. But that, everyone was excited to see that. He had Unbreakable, he had Sixth Sense. Whether or not you liked Unbreakable,
it was a blockbuster sensation.
This was one that everyone was talking about, everyone was going to, and it's the one that had a lot of memes and pop culture around it.
It was also shaped to be a summer film.
And I think some people didn't like it. It was pretty divisive when it came out because of some, quote, logic issues. But the thing is, if you really paid attention, it's not what people think it is. And that's why I think it's amazing. It's fantastically captivating and immersive, and one of still the other movies that he got a lot of praise for. Then comes The Village in 2004. That was the one that really started. It was the dividing line in a lot of ways, because that is where a lot of people really hated that movie for how it ended, because the concept, the trailer was amazing.
That movie felt like the movie itself was fine.
Such a good setup.
I would say for probably 2.5 acts, it was fine. But it felt like he did a twist just because he wanted to do a twist. And that twist, the multiple reveals were just really bad.
Had it just been
almost
straight up,
laughable.
Yeah. Had it just been straight up what it seemed like it was about, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
And he ruined it with that. Then there's the string of bad luck. There's Lady in the Water, which Mike likes. I and many, many others.
I think people need to rewatch it and really pay attention to what's going on. There's a lot of cool aspects to that movie, things that are left to your imagination. There are clues that are never brought back, but they serve the overall purpose of the metaphor of this fairy tale. So I feel like the movie has been unfairly judged from the very time it was released.
I still think it's dumb.
Well, you know what, Thomas? You see the door right there?
Yeah. You're like, you're dumb.
You're an idiot.
But then things started to get worse. We had The Happening, comically bad, of just watching nothing happen.
People were actually laughing in the theater.
The boom. I still remember the boom mic coming into one of the shots.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck is that?
That's what Bobby said.
Yeah.
I never really noticed it. But
it's at a table.
But I hear people talking about it all the time ridiculous.
Now. I was laughing with my friends in the theater when we saw that one. Then you had the atrocious adaptation of The Last Airbender. Anybody who knows the cartoon and knows that story doesn't need to be shared, but it is one of the most egregiously bad
5% in Rotten Tomatoes
adaptations of all time. Then he had After Earth, which I don't think was so much a movie as it was a platform for Jaden Smith's movie career attempts, which also was the Hindenburg of his career at that time, for at least for films. And
his career died.
With that just movie. Like the Hindenburg.
Yeah.
Went up in flames and was very short-lived.
Oh, the humanity.
Oh, look at that. It's rising. Oh, dear God, the humanity. Then there was a couple of years where he had The Visit. That one seemed to do a little bit better, but
it was fine.
After The Last Airbender in 2010 and After Earth in 2013, there was a lot of silence around him. He wasn't making a movie every 2 years. It was more of a 3 or longer year cadence. But the one that really brought him back to the limelight for a lot of people was 2016's Split with James McAvoy, which is a phenomenal film. Very creepy, very well made.
One of his best.
And its connection to Unbreakable, while strenuous, like very, very loose, because it's purely an after credit scene, it did set him up for Glass, which so many people were excited by. You have Sam Jackson, Bruce Willis, it's the trilogy, and yet it fell apart horrendously. That had such hype and such disappointment. We reviewed that back in the day.
Yeah.
And I still don't really forgive that movie for wasting the potential.
You also reviewed Split.
Which I loved.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was 2021's Old, which seems to be 50-50 with audiences. And now there's Knock at the Cabin, which is an adaptation of a novel. It's not one of his own original ideas. So that's a long-winded way of saying he really has been in for a penny, out for a pound. Like, there has been
He's
a
not
positive
consistent.
and then a negative, or a string of positives and a string of negatives. He's 50-50, I would say. Anytime you go to the theater, you're 50-50 on whether or not you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because the guy is a solid director, which we see here with Knock at the Cabin. The quick synopsis for this one is, while vacationing, a girl and her parents are taken hostage by armed strangers who demand that the family make a choice to avert the apocalypse. Now, this one is starring Dave Bautista, Jonathan Groff, Ben Aldridge, I cannot pronounce names, Nikki Amuka Bird, I want to say, Rupert Grint, I thought it was Grant for some long, Abby Quinn, Kristen Chu. There are a lot of things about this movie, because I remember watching the trailer, and I will admit the trailer got me. I stopped watching it halfway through, because that's my litmus test. If a trailer is enticing or exciting to me, I'll stop watching it because I know I want to go see the movie, and I won't spoil any more of it. Now, the setup for this one is very much Strangers, I feel, from 2008, where there's this isolated, in that one it's a couple, in this one it's a couple and their kids. It's a small family. And they're put in an isolated environment with people who seem to want to do them harm. This one is, without wishing to get into spoilers, very effective with a lot of his directorial choices. Camera angles, performances, setting the tension properly is all there.
Yeah, for me, that's probably the win of this film. Not probably. It is the win of this film because the movie struggles in some places. But one thing that you can say about M. Night, except for his big budget endeavors like After Earth and The Last Airbender, one thing he does consistently, whether the writing is good or not, it's never the directing that falters. It's never the acting. It's usually the writing. It feels forced sometimes. Like he's gotten into this rut where, hey, I have to blow people's minds. So he focuses.
He's become a victim of his success in that way. What he became known for, he now feels like he has to have every time.
Yeah.
Which is also therefore his own undoing.
And if you always do twists, it just becomes laughable. Then it doesn't
become a twist anymore.
And it becomes funny. But the thing that stands out for me when it comes to this movie is his directing. He creates mood. He creates suspense. Everything he does, his shot choices, the acting is amazing. He is one of the best directors when it comes to actors. I would even put him on the top 5. He's up there with Tarantino with getting actors to talk like normal people, regular Joes, whether you're an assassin or a waitress at a diner. He knows how to get people to talk how they talk in real life.
Well, what I like about this movie a lot when it comes to that aspect too is that each character's voice is very distinct. He is good at that. That I will give him writing credit
Characterizations.
for. Characterizations. The Rupert Grint's character of Redmond sounds very different than Leonard, Dave Bautista's character. You can just read the lines of Eric and Andrew, the two parents, and you know who's who.
Yes, that is M. Night's number one biggest skill. He is able to get performances from actors. Dave Bautista, probably his best role.
Yeah.
When it comes to acting.
Yeah.
he once again has proven that he really does care about the craft of acting, which he continues to say in interviews that that's his goal, is to become a better and better and better actor. He wants to let all those schlocky roles go, and he wants to work on his craft. And you can see that this is one of his first films where he wanted to take the role very serious, and M. Night helped him deliver that.
Well, the trailer with his little opening speech is fantastic, and it perfectly sets the tone for what's going to happen in this movie. And it starts pretty fucking fast, I will say. And it's very effective. The performances are very strong. It feels like genuine people. They all feel distinct and unique. And he sets the tone really well. And the camera choices helped, especially at the beginning, 15 minutes, make it feel like you are very well immersed. You are trapped in the house. There's so many windows and doors all of a sudden that you have to barricade. There's no safe, like, that's one of those things, like, you love homes that have like those glass windows, like, look at the view, until you have to like defend it in a horror movie, and then you're like, this is a terrible structural setup. What the fuck is wrong with us? It does it very, very effectively. But what's interesting, I think, is that he did write this off of a novel. The Knock at the Cabin is adapted from The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. So it's very similar, but he still wrote this. He took it in a different direction from the novel. It's not a one-to-one, but the general pieces are there. I want to talk about Dave Bautista, though, for just a minute, because you said this was perhaps your favorite of him. Mm-hmm. Do you think this can be the movie that other people will give him a chance for? Because he's been in a lot of articles lately, like Variety, talking about people, why doesn't he get rom-com? What's wrong? Why is he that ugly? He said. But we had a conversation after this movie about how his appearance is kind of holding him back in some ways because of the musculature that he carries around with him. It does kind of limit him for what people see as leading man. Anything other than thug or villain, as stereotypical and mean as that may be. Or an action superstar. Yeah. Like, those are the roles that he's going to find for a while. But if he really is seeking to improve the craft, then I could easily see him pulling a Christian Bale Machinist and then a Batman.
Yeah.
I could see him pulling a Charlize Theron Monster and transforming himself. And for me, I think this was the movie that shows the potential for him is there.
Yeah. His next step is to lose weight.
Yeah.
Like, I have a feeling that he's going to slim down. Now, he's always going to be a big guy because he's a big guy. But if this role works for him, if people walk away thinking, wow, he sold me, I can imagine that he will try to stop working out as hard. Which, listen, that's not as easy as it sounds. Many times people who exercise that do it for psychological reasons. It's their medicine.
Right.
So who knows if he's able to do that. But he is holding himself back by being as big as he is. It's the reason why Arnold and Stallone and these old 80s actors, they put themselves in kind of the same roles.
Yeah.
I mean, Stallone has managed to find new
life.
Yeah, new avenues to take his career, but he's also lost about, I'd say, a good 80 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, well, he's also aged substantially.
Yeah, he's a lot smaller he's always had a smaller stature, but his overall mass has dropped drastically, and I feel like it's intentional because just a few years back, he was big for Expendables when he needed to be, and now that he wants to do different types of roles,
Tulsa King.
Yeah, he's lost that bulk, and I think Dave Bautista can do the same thing. I would like to see him do it.
Yeah. You know who surprised me, I think, with this movie, though, was Rupert Grint. I think him being this redneck, angry character was very convincing. Like, he did a great job feeling frantic, desperate, and just different than so many other things I've seen him in.
Harry Potter churned out some fantastic talent.
Quality
What's
actors.
The likelihood of casting young kid actors and then they actually end up being good actors?
All three of the main ones would end up being solid actors.
That is extremely rare. That never happens. Usually kid actors fall away because they're not good. Mm-hmm. And the reason why they even have a career when they're young is because they're cute little kids.
Yeah.
But man, you're right, dude. Rupert Grint did a fantastic job. But I've also watched a few TV shows that he's done since Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So I wasn't as surprised because
That's
is
fair.
good.
Yeah. The acting overall, though, is great. And the thing is that's interesting is this movie, without wishing to get into too much spoilers, there's the surface level what seems to be happening, and then there's a deeper story of maybe not a deeper story, but there's more going on than just what it seems to be at first.
At the core of the story, it's about a family.
Right.
And their deep connection and deep love for each other.
Right.
That's what really the story is about, more than anything. Yes, I think most people can tell there's a supernatural element that isn't a spoiler. That is just
a driving force?
Yeah, plot.
Yeah.
It's a plot device more than anything, because when you cut away all of that excess, and I'm just using that word because I don't feel like it's excess, but I'm just using that word for a lack of better one. But when you pull away all that stuff, it's a story about two people who are in love.
Yeah.
And the problems they have had to go through in order to be together and be where they are today with their child.
And I think that aspect of the script really works. There is the plot A that we're watching, and then there's some flashbacks to past points for the two parents that essentially, I guess Batista's the lead, but really the two protagonists that we're watching, Eric and Andrew. And I thought those were well woven into the narrative as a whole. I thought that was fitting. It didn't feel like I was being ripped out of an interesting story to something I didn't care about. It felt like, okay, we're getting a little bit more about them. It makes you a little bit more invested when we've had so little time with these characters, and helps establish that they are a couple that would make the kind of decisions that are asked of them. It doesn't feel cheap or fake or forced. There's a lot of other movies that will take the easier route of just assume that they love each other and don't ask questions. And then this really, really does put in the effort. And I liked that.
And also from a social commentary standpoint, and I want to be careful with how I say this, because I don't want people thinking this is a film doused with commentary, because it's not.
It's really not.
The two leads are gay men. That's who the family is built up. Or I should say built up. That's who makes up the family.
Yeah.
Two gay men who married and adopted a child. And that is important to their story, but not the overall story. But it's
important to them as characters for what's happening to them.
And it's not platforming. They're not getting on a soapbox and doing any type of preaching. The characters happen to be gay. They deal with things that they may have had to overcome throughout their life. But other than that, it just feels very straightforward. In fact, there's a little bit of a fuck you at Disney, which it's a little calling them on their hypocrisy, because there's a scene where the little girl talks about her dads and that there's not a lot a lot of two dads on TV. And then she says, never on Disney Channel. You never see two dads on the Disney Channel. I'm like, that is not them like telling Disney Channel to do better. That's them firing shots at their hypocrisy.
Well, it's very realistic. And I liked that.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't see it as a big deal. And she says, except for my teacher, who thinks it's just the greatest thing ever. And she's like, I don't get that. Because for her, it's just her dad's, her family. And which is what we want to move towards. And yet the people who claim to vouch for or speak for this group are I'm not making the full comparison to Get Out, but that kind of like, we are so supportive that it kind of becomes...
Well, isn't that what they say? The little girl said, my teacher always says, wow, this is so great. But my dad say when people continually say that, it means they don't really mean what they're saying. When they're constantly saying, oh, it's such a good thing.
Yeah. I liked that.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like the background stuff of what they've had to go through is just simply for them as a relationship of what they've gone through to give us a better sense of they've been together for like fucking 13 years or something.
Well, we have to understand, because there is sacrificial elements. That's in the trailer. That's not a spoiler. There are things that they must do. And in order to sell the that type of suspense, to sell that type of element, you have to believe that these people truly care about each other. So they had to build a bit of a backstory and give us context, and they gave us just enough. I'm usually not a fan of flashbacks.
Yeah.
But the way we
have a reason that we're not.
It's less of a flashback and more just non-linear. It's not, they're not drawing attention to the convention of flashbacks. It's simply non-linear. Yeah.
No. Now, so can we talk about the sacrifice, you think, or what they're being asked to do and why?
That's in the trailer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the point is they're being asked by these four strangers, Batista and Grint and the others, to have one of them must choose to kill another member of the family, their family, willingly, not suicide. They have to do it to each other in order to avert the apocalypse. Which sounds insane, which is kind of the point. And
they work within that doubt.
They work on that as a plot device or a driving factor of is this complete batshit insanity? Are they telling the truth? Is it at least what they think is the truth? And I think you need that you need that setup and context, non-linear context, to give you a reason as to why you'd believe that they would not make these kind of decisions. Especially because most horror movies have, stereotypical relationships of the jock, the hot girl, and then like the jock bailed on her the second she's needed when the killer shows up.
There's certain archetypes that are expected in certain genres. Yeah.
Shallow relationships that when push comes to shove, people shove and take care of themselves. And that's not the case here. And things escalate as needed. Now, it is a bit different from the book. The core concept is essentially the same. And what I found interesting was, overall, I'd say I was really invested and really interested in the story for the first 30, 45 minutes, the first half even, of where could this go? What does this mean? Following what I feel like are the clues and where this is going to go. And then things kind of take a bit of a turn in some ways. I don't know. I don't want to spoil.
Yeah. Well, okay. So typically, most of M. Night's movies are extremely simple.
Right.
But what makes them interesting is within that simplicity, he finds a way to fuck with you.
Mm-hmm.
This movie fails in its simplicity.
That's a good way to put it. It really does. Because it has the potential to be one of, I think, his greater works, the greater half of his stuff.
With the way the movie started, the first act, I was like, this is going to be one of his best movies.
And I was captivated, dude. I was paying attention. I am fully there. I mean, we're in the theater, so that always helps. Don't just sit there with your phone, people. Why are you even watching a movie if you're on your phone? But...
In fact, I'm
fully there. Like, oh fuck, okay.
Fact, the elements that actually work with the movie would be better and more effective if you see it in a theater. I feel like the things that work about this film, you need to view it in a theater to really get the effect.
Yeah,
because a lot of it's sound design, a lot of it's
especially
massive
the
images, like the doorways. Because the movie is called Knock on the Cabin or Knock at the Cabin, the way they exemplify the scene that the title is named for, and you see just this door, this massive door that's framed. It's just fantastic. There's so much goodness when it comes to the artistry of this movie.
Like right there, the sound design, right? It's one of those things that you'd never think that someone knocking at the door could be scary. But when done properly with directing, camera work, and sound design, it's unsettling. It feels intrusive. It feels like you're being violated.
There's a good 5 minutes where you're just talking to the door.
Yeah.
And they capture the door like you capture someone you're not sure about.
It's a character.
Yes.
The door is a character.
It's from a low angle. There's certain shots that are even shaded differently with the lighting.
It's ominous.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's smart.
It's well done. And dude, that whole time you feel like you are somebody in the cabin with them. Like, dude, don't fucking open it. Stay away from the window.
But also at the same time, which is what he does so well as well, we were talking about the things that M. Night does a good job on regularly, it's also his humor. He has a great sense of humor that he always brings to the characters. And even though there's a moment where you are uneasy, it's very unsettling with these people outside the cabin demanding to come in, and yet they managed to make that entire scene suspenseful, but also laced with a little bit of humor throughout, especially when they start trying to close the windows and you have Batista walking by the window right when the girl shuts it. There's just funny little cues throughout the film that also make the movie work. But when it's all said and done, this is a review. When it's all said and done, it doesn't really amount to much.
I think that's the saddest thing, is that there's all the parts. It's lesser than the sum of its parts.
Oh, yeah. That's a good way of saying it.
It has great sound design. It's got some great directing. It's got great performances. It's got a unique concept. It's got a lot of stuff going for it. And like I said, it's a 100-minute runtime, which is pretty tight.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first 50 minutes, I was all aboard. But unfortunately, by the end, I'm like, I found myself lacking. I found, like you said, in its simplicity, it was a little disappointing, which is a shame.
I've also grown tired of M. Night's thinly strung together cosmology. It's worked for so many years, where he gives you little bits of his cosmology, world building.
Mm-hmm.
Like Unbreakable, you get this idea that there's an entire world inside of this world that we haven't seen, that there are literally superheroes among us.
Right.
And that's as far as they take it. And you're like, and you're left, oh my God, I need to know more. It's exciting. He has done that now so many times with his cosmology that it leaves you wanting more. And this movie's the worst one of that. He introduces this world, and it's very thin. It's thinly connected. I don't even know if it's believable.
Well, that was the thing. It's to fend off the apocalypse, right?
That's the idea.
And there's news clips played throughout the movie, and they felt fictional to me, without wishing to spoil.
Do you think that was the point? Because they were also playing a little bit into the modern era of skepticism, and we don't believe what we see.
And I think that was smart, but like so many things, there's all these great ideas, and they take the ball, and instead of running with it, they just put it down gently.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, fuck, man.
Let's go into spoilers.
So
we need. There's just we need. I think
we need to get there.
Yeah. Let's save. You want to do our ratings really fast?
Let's do a overall rating.
All right.
And whether or not you should see it or not. And then we'll get into spoilers for those who can't wait or have been burned by M. Night too many times. Mike, you go first.
This one's complicated for me. I'm conflicted. That's no what I was trying to say.
I would say because he's had a 50-50, not only do I want your score, but a coin toss. Is this one you'd recommend people see? Or give it a pass? Because so many of his movies fall into one of those two categories.
If you don't see this in the theater, don't bother seeing it.
There you go.
I do feel like it's strong, but I also feel like it's more of the same.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like M. Night needs to dig into his well of creativity and come up with some new ideas, because this movie feels like he took a few parts from all of his movies, put it in a jar, shook up the pieces, and said, let me see if I can remake one of the movies I've made already 10 times and kind of make something similar. It feels like we've seen it before.
Yeah.
There's nothing new and exciting in this film. If you are a cinephile and you can appreciate directing and acting and sound design, then yes, you should go see it. If you want to see a good, like, suspense horror film, I don't think this is going to hit for some of these people.
I think it would for half of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think my RMD score, it's hard.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's 65.
Ooh, okay.
Which is still good.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even a 70. You know what? If the ending was a little more complicated, I would probably this will give people a good picture here.
Okay.
If the movie just changed a few things and made a better connection to the reveal, the movie would have been probably between 90 and 100. But because it just feels like, oh, okay. It's not innovative. It's not overly creative. And that's why it's 65%. I felt like he just fell into his comfort zone. It feels like M. Night paint by numbers.
It's funny that you say that number because that was the score I was going to give it, was a 65, because I was like 70, but that's the thing. It doesn't quite earn that.
No. How can you give it a 70 when there's a picture like The Sixth Sense sitting at 86 and Split is sitting at 78? It's Split.
Split, we were telling people, go out and see that.
See, he did differently with Split. Split became more interesting during the third act.
Yeah.
And
it was already interesting.
And it was already a good movie, but it got that much better in the third act. This movie, interesting in the first act, kind of interesting in the second act, and the third act, especially the denouement, the final minute, I was just like, why?
Yeah. That's the thing. So I would say 65 is an apt score because it is, the first half of it is really strong. I was invested. I was excited. I was convinced that there were certain things that were going to happen because it made all the sense in the world, yet was also exciting and interesting. And like I said, it's like you give the ball, they take it, and instead of running with it, they just gently put it down, and I'm left disappointed. Because what they did necessarily wasn't bad, but you're right. He hasn't done anything that different now for some time, which we'll get into specifically in our spoilers. And I think that's a great way to say it. If you're not going to see it in theaters, you're not missing anything. Theaters is where to see this. Theaters is where it'll shine. But it does not have the staying power of his stronger films. So with that, we're going to get into spoilers where we can talk about all these other things that we're trying to avoid at length and really get into why we feel it didn't take things far enough. So for those of you who are going to stick around, just stick around. For everybody else, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time. We're going into spoilers. All right, before we get into just script, is there anything else you want to that we didn't touch on?
No, I think that was good. Yeah.
What time are we at?
We have about another 15 minutes to go.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready.
We're good.
All right, everybody. Now it is the spoilers section for M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin. And really what happened, I think, with this movie is that the script is a great setup. It starts strong. The characters are great throughout. But at a certain point, there's two avenues the story can go down. As holes start to be punched in what Batista, Grint, Quinn, and Nikki Amuka Bird start telling Andrew and Eric, that what the invaders tell them starts to crumble just a little bit. There's ties to Andrew and Eric's real life, and it turns out one of the very first people who is sacrificed of the four is the guy who assaulted Andrew years prior. And that leads this opening avenue of, this is not them telling us the apocalypse. It's not a true apocalypse. They're crazy. They're having a shared delusion. This is a organized, shared insanity. And it has a really interesting plot point that it can go down that way, that maybe the apocalypse isn't real. We as the audience are starting to wonder who to believe.
When they reveal that Rupert Grint's character is from
their past,
that's when the movie got really interesting.
And that was like, holy fuck.
This is cool. But then it doesn't matter.
They don't do anything with it.
It doesn't go anywhere. There's no other connections. It's just there to verify.
It's literally just a coincidence.
It's poorly done. And I think we need to just say what the movie is. If you watch the trailer, you know what the movie's about. It's four people who are trying to stop the apocalypse, and the two people who are in love, they have to kill.
Have to Romeo and Juliet each other.
They have to kill one of each. I can't talk. They have to kill
the other.
So if you saw the trailer, You saw the entire reveal. There is nothing else there.
It just
and
turns
that's
out,
the most disappointing part is that when you watch the trailer and you walk away, walking out of that theater when it's over, you're like, wait a second. So there is no reveal. You literally gave us the answer in the trailer.
If you watch the trailer, and this is why I don't watch trailers, dude, because I didn't know about that at all, the apocalypse bit. I thought this was just going to be The Strangers from 2008 with a new shade of paint and a twist. I didn't know the apocalypse was a factor in this movie because I stopped it before it got to that point. If you watch this trailer, you are spending 100 minutes waiting to find out if they kill one of each other. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's a shame because the beginning is such a good setup of this is just pure coincidence. We're punching holes in the story. Is this a greater conspiracy that they were all putting together? Is one of them even dead? How much of this is them attacking this couple because they had some ramifications from their past? Because we know one of the Andrew who got assaulted is a lawyer. Did he ruin some of their lives? And this is some, comeuppance that they've planned for them? No, none of that matters. It is purely about the apocalypse, and then the movie's over.
Now, just to give people that are listening to the spoilers a little more context to what's happening. So the trailer does tell you everything, but there are some details here. So I don't know, the last 15 minutes of the movie, it's revealed that these 4 people that are asking our 2 protagonists to kill
one another or somebody
to kill each other, they also are not really quite clear what's going on. They're all in the same boat. The only difference is those 4 people who are regular Joes. They're nobody special. They're not murderers. They're just like everyone else.
One's
just
a
regular
nurse,
people.
One's a teacher. One's a cook.
They, at some point in their lives, they started to get visions. And these visions told them to construct weapons. And then the visions told them to meet with each other. And then the visions told them where to go, which is to this cabin. And then told them that this is what they need to do. They need to ask these people to sacrifice themselves. And every time they say no, one of the 4 people who are insisting that they kill each other has to kill themselves instead. And when they kill themselves, a portion of humanity dies with them. Mm-hmm. So that sounds really cool because it is cool, but that's it.
Yeah.
That's literally it. And then the last 15 minutes of the movie, the character, one of the main characters, looks to his husband and says, all of this is real.
We have to do this.
We have to do this. Do you know who they are? They are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Now, I want to say, because I leaned over to Mike, after the first death of one of these characters, I leaned over and I said, if character B is the second one to die, I figured it out.
Yeah, I just feel like even that, like you figured it out, that's cool. But
but that's what I'm saying.
I don't know how though, because there's nothing there. There's
simply
nothing
because of the color scheme and the number of people involved. 4.
Yeah,
and part of that's from Supernatural.
Yeah, because that's one of my biggest problems with the movie is they draw this thin connection to each character as to why they represent each of the 4 horsemen. And I've never heard them described that way.
Well, I've never heard them described that way either. And that's what I'm saying is like they went with literally just, which is the problem with the movie as a whole. It went with the base explanation. If you grab
These
a Bible,
are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, but they're not the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
They're representations
of the apocalypse based on how you describe them. I've never heard them described that way. You just decided there's 4 of them, and now they're the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
If you grab any Bible, look at the book of Revelations when it talks about that, and look at the colors of the horses, match them up 1 to 1, and that's as far as it goes.
Yeah.
They added stuff to make it seem like it was more thought out, that each of them represented something different, but it doesn't sync up with what they actually apparently are. And it doesn't go any deeper. And that's why I'm saying I knew it from the beginning because there was only the surface level.
So the 4 horsemen, now if you go by M. Night's playbook, he gives you that reveal usually in the last 15, 20 minutes of his movie, sometimes last 5 to 10 minutes. So he gives you his reveal, but his reveal is a guy figuring out that they're the 4 horsemen without any actual evidence.
And I think that was a shame.
There is nothing in the movie at all. And I was actually paying attention to the background, the bookshelf, because there's a bookshelf behind the two men.
The whole movie.
The entire movie. I'm reading the covers of the books or the spines of the books to see if there's any clues as to what's going on. I'm looking at potential metaphor. There is absolutely nothing. Now, I can't say that with 100% certainty. I may go back when it's on video or digital and rewatch to see if I can pinpoint some stuff. But knowing that this was about the apocalypse, that's kind of what I was geared already to look for. And I didn't see anything leading up to that point. They just suddenly decide that, okay, M. Night's like, okay, this is the moment where you, based on no actual empirical proof that you were given, you're just going to suddenly draw these connections.
But that's the sad
just
thing.
Just because I'm telling you to now, so go ahead and draw the connections. Because those connections are not there. If you look at a similar movie, Lady in the Water, where they did something very similar, where Paul Giamatti is trying to figure out this puzzle when it comes to this fairy tale, this idea, the different roles that each of these regular people that live in this apartment play, there were clues leading up to every reveal and the part that each of the characters play in Lady in the Water and why they're important. There's nothing like that in this movie. And that is why this movie goes from a potential 95%, Thomas, down to a 65%. Because the reveal is completely...
It's not earned.
It's not earned. It's not even convoluted. It's so fucking simple.
It's surface level.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. So that's the thing. The Horseman color scheme and the fact that there's 4 of them is all I knew about it, that I put it together. And the sad thing is, a better movie, and even M. Night Shyamalan 10, 20 years ago would never have told us that that's who they are. He would have left that for film fans to look and say, look at him. He dies first. He's wearing a red shirt. He represents war. He's the angry, violent one.
You know what would have made more sense, Thomas, is if the guy who came up with the idea, like, oh, these are the 4 horsemen. He should have been like a professor at a theologian.
Theologian?
A theologian, yes. He should have been a theologian.
Yeah.
Then
I don't even know what his job was.
I would buy that he would figure this out.
Yes. And he'd be the one to believe in apocalyptic events.
Yeah.
But it's not there. They just go with, yeah, they're wearing colors. They're the horsemen. You figured it out by me telling you.
It's like if in Signs at the end, rather than showing us all the clues that they gave us the entire movie, they just decided to say, oh, you know what your deal is? You see dead people.
Oh, Sixth Sense? Yeah.
Oh, what did I say?
Signs.
No, sorry, Sixth Sense. Imagine if they didn't give us that entire... That's what sold the ideas when they went back. The movie. When they went back and showed all the times when Bruce Willis's character...
That's what made it feel brilliant, because you're like, holy fuck, it's in front of us.
They did the same thing with Unbreakable. All the clues were there.
Signs. The clues are there.
Everything. Even Village, most of it's there. That reveal was so fucking stupid. But for the most part... Even the Village that a lot of people didn't like,
clues.
It's earned. The reveal is earned. That was the best word you used.
And this one is not earned. It gives it away. And there was no need. There was no need for him to say that. He could have just said, I believe them. We need to do this to save our child and all the others.
Yeah.
And then we could have looked back at it and said, dude, you know who they were? This is what they represented. Here's how it played out. We've lost the ability to fucking think. There is no subtext. There is no critical analysis. There's just, I said it to you, and therefore you understand. Go watch Jurassic World. Like, that's where we're fucking at.
It just is disappointing because M. Night is such a good...
There's such potential with
such a good aura and a good vibe. He creates a legitimate world that you can feel. It's very... he finds a way to bring you in with his filmmaking. But there's no use of the mise-en-scène. There's nothing to clue you in.
No.
There's nothing else. Everything is exactly what you said. It's all surface level. It looks like it's going to be great. But if you just dig...
If you peel back the first layer...
A little tiny bit, you can see, the old paint job and the blood underneath where someone was murdered.
And it's a shame because it really did have... so much going for it for that first 40, 50 minutes. And that first reveal of their story doesn't add up the way that they think it does. And them starting to question question themselves. Are our visions real? No, we have to believe it. We're too far now. That could have been a great thing, while still hitting on the message of, would you sacrifice the person you love to save the world? Fuck no. I don't care. that's my answer. But and it's a shame because the book it's adapted.
Dude, I would love to have a moment like that, situation like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, because it would bring meaning to my life, and I'd know that something mattered. I'm like, wait a sec, you're telling me if I allow my significant other to take me out, they can live, and the whole world will live.
You'll feel like you'll have purpose.
That takes the pressure of my existence off my shoulders completely. Just fucking ended,
okay.
and my life had meaning, and there's a legacy now. I'm done. That's all. Fair. That's all I'm living for.
I could get that. All I'm
living for is some meaning. No, yes.
I'll save the world because it'll make me look awesome.
I just want to have a legacy. I want to leave something behind.
I get it. But that's the thing. I want to talk real quick as we close this out, the adaptation of the book, because the book is very much the same thing beat for beat for a lot of it, except the entire point of the ending. And that's one of the things. This is the biggest thing that I said to Mike in the parking lot. The ending of this movie, and this is for people who do not want to see it or are just going to listen to us and not really care about spoilers. The ending of this movie has the person who's made the decision watching the world survive. That and everyone and other people that they interact with are like at the diner as they're leaving the cabin, are watching things happen and the world is fine and everybody's safe again. We're all watching it on the news. That has literally been the ending for 4 of his movies now. Glass, Knock at the Cabin, The Happening. Fuck, I'm losing the last one. There was another one.
Split also ended in a diner.
Well, with people watching
the news.
Oh, Lady in the Water. That this idea that if one person makes a sacrifice, they will save all of humanity. Yeah. Or watching us somehow come together as a species to save each other in this kind of kumbaya moment. And I'm sitting there like, dude, are you out of ideas now?
Well, that's what we said at the top of the show. It just feels like
this is
all
literally
the parts
same
of
ending.
His other movies. We've seen this before.
And still haven't seen Glass, which I don't blame you. But dude, seriously, the ending scene is almost the same fucking thing.
I wanted to see Glass. I was super excited. And then you and Brian came back from the screening and were like, dude, it's so sad. So disappointing.
Yes, it really was.
So this is what Variety just wrote on their page for Knock at the Cabin. It literally says what we just said. The Sixth Sense director has resuscitated his career more times than most, but his latest supernatural thriller feels like a tired remix of letdowns like Signs and The Happening.
Oh, Signs, hey.
I don't understand that, but maybe they're not meaning those are letdowns, but just he's already done those.
People were let down by that movie.
Really?
That's very divisive for people. They either really like it or really hate it because they think, well, one of the groups thinks it's symbolism and well thought out, and the other thinks aliens are dumb. Why would they come to Earth that's mostly water if they can be hurt by water? And I'm like, you don't know how subtext works, and that's why they don't like it.
I like the movie.
I know you do because I like the movie.
I think it's a pretty damn good movie. I don't know what people are thinking. I mean, listen, it's like all his movies. They're simple. And if
they don't need to be complex.
No, they're very simple movies, but they work well.
The Sixth
half
Sense
of them
isn't that complex.
No, it's very simple.
Dude,
all his movies are simple.
But that's the thing. So this movie ends the same way so many of his other movies have, and he changed the ending because one of them makes the decision and saves the world, and in the novel, the little girl gets accidentally killed during a wrestle for the gun. And then the other two, the people who sacrifice essentially kill themselves. And then Andrew and Eric decide to refuse to obey whatever God doesn't see their daughter's death as enough. So they walk away and get in the car and drive into the sunset as the world is going crazy.
Wow.
Deciding to be together despite whatever happens.
That is way better.
ball slapper of an ending of holy gut punch. It is depressing.
But think about that. Okay, so your daughter dies. That's fucking sad, right?
Yeah.
That would be hard to see on screen as well.
Soul crushing.
But imagine that.
Fuck God. We're going to be together
if our daughter's
forever,
death isn't enough,
then we don't want to be alive.
Jeez, that is way better.
That is exceptionally better. And this is rewritten to have the same ending that he's had in 3 other movies.
I wonder if the studio made him change it.
It would be dark. It's hard to sell a child dying in any capacity.
We don't kill children in this
world.
It was an R-rated film.
That's the thing, though. If you were going to do it, this would have been the movie. So but even if you didn't want to have the kid die, you could still have kept that narrative thread line that makes the book a gut punch.
They could also have done that with one of them. They didn't have to kill the daughter. It could have
been the gun went off and killed one of the husbands.
Same idea, but instead of killing the children, you kill the father. Yeah.
And the thing too, though, dude, is like we had child get killed in other movies, like Pet Sematary we saw a couple years ago.
Yeah, but that's firmly established in the horror genre.
Is this not?
This is M. Night's movies have more of a mainstream appeal. Even his R films, yeah.
The book is a psychological horror, but that's the thing is that in a way, his movie, by changing the ending and going with the basic level rather than if you were going to change the ending, and you should have gone with change it to the degree we were talking about when the more interesting door was opened. Yeah. But instead it pulls its punches on both fronts. And so while it is an interesting start, it has not a satisfying ending. And that's where we're saying it's lesser than the sum of its parts.
That ending would have made the movie. It probably would have given it at least an 80.
It would have been 85. Like, you have to see this, but heads up, you're going to be depressed. So,
dude.
Meanwhile, now I'm like, well, you can see it. You'll enjoy at least part of it.
Honestly, Thomas, if you've seen his other films,
you've seen this.
You don't really need to see this movie. Now that we have said our spoilers, I mean, that's kind of my takeaway.
Yeah. See it for Dave Bautista's acting.
There you go.
See it for that.
Yeah.
Give the guy a chance.
I really like him.
I know. He's a likable guy.
I really like him. He's just so like down to earth and humble.
He just wants to work hard.
He just wants to work fucking hard.
Yeah. And nobody does.
He just wants to work. And he's smart, he's a nice dude, and he's a capable actor. And I do feel like he can get better because he wants to and he works hard at it.
If nothing else, this movie has made me excited to continue to watch his career.
For sure. And not M. Night's.
Oh.
I think I'm done.
I sadly think I'm done.
I think I'm done. Although there's an Apple TV show he's producing.
Well, that doesn't mean you wrote it or directed it.
That is true.
That means you were like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I'll pay for it.
Because apparently that's like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, what is that?
And Apple TV does produce. I think 99% of their shows are amazing.
They've been quality. Yeah.
They're the only streaming service that can say they have, 100% record almost with TV shows.
Yeah. That's a more and more mighty feat every day.
Yeah.
So that's going to do it here for us. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.